This is the Volleyball Coaching Wizards Podcast, covering everything coaching, motivated and inspired by interviews and conversations with some of the world's great volleyball coaches. To learn more about the project, visit volleyballcoachingwizards.com. Now here are your hosts, John Foreman and Mark Lebedew.
Welcome to episode 29 of the podcast. And this time we're sharing an oldie but a goodie in the grand scheme of the time frame of the Wizards project so far. It goes back to one of the first interviews we did with Vital Heynen, who currently coaches at Friedrichshafen in the top German Bundesliga on the men's side. And it talks about his view on team selection, the use of substitutions, and generally keeping squad happy in terms of playing time and that sort of thing. So our conversation starts with some of what Vital has to say, and then goes on from there. Hope you enjoy.
We want to talk about management of expectations and some things along those lines. And I wanted to touch specifically on something that you said earlier about sharing playing time, and that all 12 players are playing and contributing and feeling like they contribute. How easy is it, or how difficult, or how do you manage that within the group? Firstly, because some people think that they should be playing all the time, and then also with management and supporters, that you may not be putting your best team, or what they think your best team is, out in every match. We're specifically interested in how you rotate the players, how you use all the players, all 12 players, and how you manage that specific situation with supporters and management who maybe think you aren't always playing with the best team.
I think you have to manage a problem before there's a problem. I mean with that, to management and supporters, like for sure management, you have to explain before how you are and how you work. Yeah, so they know what's the. Now I come back it's my basic starting point. I didn't like coaches in my time who were not using the guys on the bench, or were giving the guys only a chance when you were 2-0 and 23-15 behind, and then telling afterwards, I gave you a chance to play. I think you have to be before the problem. So I was before the problem. If you explain management, that you will work with 12 players who can be about equal, and you do the same to the players. On the day I ask a player, I always explain, I have no certainty, I have no starting six, I have a group of players, and if you're very good, you play all the games. But if you are sometimes not super in one aspect, you will not play all the games. If I have a player who's so good that he's the best passer, server, blocker, defender, and so on, there's not so much chance I will change him, only when he's getting tired or to save him for one of the reason. Otherwise, we always play. But for the most, I think that you will always find that's the same like about my staff principle. From the guys standing on the side, I think you can always find one quality where they are better than one of those 7 starting guys. If one of the guys on the side, they need it. If they don't have it, you have a problem. Yeah.
Yep.
So guys on the side need a quality, like for example a good serve, and then you can change one middle blocker for a serve, only one ball a game, but the guy on the side knows at least that's my quality, I'm better than the starting 7. That can be a serve, it can be a block, it can be a defense, it can be a double change. There's so many aspects where you can think, it can be coming in on crucial moments, difficult games. There's so many things you can convince a player that he's doing well, and that he can help the team, and it makes, in my eyes, it easier to train. You have guys who are motivated. It's one of my goals always, can I keep my whole team, all my players, can I keep my players happy till the end of the season? And that is one of those big challenges. How happy can I keep them? I was writing it yesterday, I'm happiness coach. That was a better word for me. Keeping my players happy. I find it very important. Now I get better and better on this. Like in Poland after the last game, I think for my 15 players, 14 were really happy with the season. Only one guy was also playing almost nothing the whole season. Had a very small role. And that you see that the role in the team, what he can do on games, gives players a certain happiness for the team. And if they know their role and you can explain them, and the guys on the court, it's also that, like I said, it's not so easy. Guys has to be changed. Nobody wants to be changed. It's a process. It's a process where you explain people and hope it's working, and where you look for better qualities. That's why you have to. You also have to scout trainings. I was doing the last years much more scouting the trainers, so you can see also every day that somebody is a better defender than another one. And if you can show it every day, people start to understand. I think it's about showing explanation and not pushing too hard, but still doing it. I believe everybody get involved in the game. So, happiness coach, I like that word. I can use that.
To have this kind of a group feeling being inside the team, do you think that it's better for players to play a little bit in every match, even if it's just 2 or 3 points, or to play a whole match once a month, for example?
I think the first one. You have to have the players every game involved. So I'm the guy. I don't know how many changes you have. Six in a set, and if you have 5 games, 30, I will be over 20 for sure in a game always. And so I use my players a lot, even only for 1 ball or 2 balls to play, so that that they are getting used to have playing time. Like that, if it's coming to a crucial game, they are prepared to play this 1 ball. Mm-hmm. Like this year in Poland, the competition was very tough. So I think I was starting like 80% of the games with the same starting team, and there were guys who were playing really 95%, what was a lot for me. But still, all the guys were playing. Yep. All the guys were feeling that they were sometimes doing something for the team. Yeah, it's not easy to explain to a player you're doing something for the team if you train good. It's also true. It's complete. I agree with coaches who tell this. It's completely true if you have a good training, but everybody wants this spotlight, I think, to be somewhere, some moment in the spotlight. Yeah, and that I give them then.
This is a really interesting question, and it comes up, obviously it comes up a lot in juniors, and it's the basis of having 1 million substitutions in every set, but it's an issue at every level because you need to have players who are engaged in the process, in practice, in the team, in the life of the team, and the best way to engage people is by rewarding them with playing time, and how you do that is always a tricky situation because the different requirements of the situation, the imperatives to win, and so on, do restrict the possibilities sometimes, or at least the pressure the coach feels to win, which is slightly different. And here, Vital's way of organising that is really interesting, and it was a question that I was eager to ask him because it's something that he does very well.
Okay, yeah, I found interesting as he's done. If anybody's listened to other parts of his interview where he talks about the development of his coaching style, coming from basically trying to do the opposite of what coaches before him when he was a player had done. And in this case, he specifically mentions, or at least implies, that when he was a player, he thought more people should get more playing time than they actually did. And it's definitely one of those things that you can kind of look at it from a player's perspective, and I've got a recent example that kind of speaks to it, in that the women's soccer team here at Midwestern State played their last regular season match. I think it was on Sunday, and it was 2-2, very late, and they earned a penalty kick. And the player who normally takes them for the team deferred in favor of a player who was a senior who'd never scored a goal in her whole college soccer career. And let her take the penalty to give her a chance to score a goal. Now, to say that was probably not a call the coach should make. The coach is probably thinking, hey, let's put my best penalty taker up there and let's get a win here. But players do sometimes have different perspectives on things, and you can even see it when a player who doesn't get a lot of playing time gets a chance and gets out there, and the whole bench gets really excited for them, and even more so if they happen to make a play, in whatever their specialty is. So you can see the value from Vital's perspective, from that player's perspective, and I kind of liked how he talked about being a fun coach. As a coach of fun, not that he himself is fun, although that may be the case too.
And I think happiness coach was another word that he used.
Right.
And he's actually used that one in interviews that maybe even after they won the bronze medal at the World Championships. He said in an interview that the goal of his work was to make people happy, and he was really happy that he was able to make a lot of people happy. World Championships, which is a wonderful sentiment, and the cynic that lies just beneath the surface of my happy-go-lucky nature wonders if he means that literally, but regardless of that, it's a great way to go about your work, of course.
Yeah. But getting back to the whole idea of squad usage and stuff like that, there's clearly a spectrum here. And you've got, on the one end, coaches like Russ Rose, whose basic philosophy is you earn playing time based on practice. I don't share it around. He's pretty famous. Even when he's playing first-round NCAA tournament matches against teams that have no chance against his squad, he plays his starters. And he doesn't really substitute. He just goes with the team that, in his mind, has earned their spots on the floor. And that's it. If you haven't managed to do that in practice, then, work harder, be better, whatever the case may be. And then obviously, Vital is on the other end of that spectrum, or at least toward the other end of that spectrum, in terms of trying to get people in.
Russ has one of my favorite quotes of all time about that, on that topic, and he says he often gets asked why he doesn't give players a chance, and he said that's something along the lines of that's ridiculous. They have a chance every day in practice, and the game is not a present. It's not a gift, but the really strong point was that they have a chance every day to prove that they should be playing.
Right, from a slightly different perspective.
I really like that idea because I hear a lot that that players need to have a chance to play, and regardless of their level, regardless of their practice performance, if they deserve it. And my argument is often that if you give somebody without deserving it, they don't appreciate it. They have the feedback that they don't have to be really good to play. They don't have to fight for a position, and so they continue with the way that they go. And that's given me some conflict with at least one club that I work with, for example.
Yeah. Well, and that begs the question about juniors teams, where, at least in the States, and I can't speak to other places, but in the States, the squads are generally kept relatively small, as in 9 or 10, maybe?
Yeah.
Which means the majority of the people on the team are going to get a lot of playing time.
Yeah.
And, of course, there's a couple parts of it, and one is the coaches naturally don't want to have to deal with the complexities of large squads and sharing playing time around and dealing with the parents of the kids who don't get to play and all that. And, of course, from a sanity perspective, you can totally see where they're coming at. But to your point, it also means that maybe there's going to have to be playing time that isn't necessarily earned, because you only have so many people in one position. And sometimes that's all the people that go on the court. You have two middles, okay, both middles are playing.
Yeah, I'd actually think of it more as if you had 12 in your squad and you played numbers 11 and 12 just to give them a run as the unearned part. how you choose your team, I imagine you have some sort of quality basis, so you earn your spot on the team, so to speak. So even if you only have 2 middles, I might look at it a little bit more that way. But another, go on.
No, I was going to say one of the things that I talked about with Mike Lingenfelter, because he does do juniors a lot, is the idea that yes, there's a selection process at the beginning of the season, but the quality of the player can change, especially relative to other players, as the season goes along.
Yes, definitely.
And it can actually be dramatic enough that a player who was selected for the first team probably halfway through the season should be dropped down to the second team because that's the level of play that they're at. But it doesn't usually happen that way. There's too many issues involved with doing that sort of thing. So that's more of what I was getting at with that kind of comment, where when you have a limited number of players and everybody's going to have to play one way or another, then there is no incentive to necessarily put as much into the training effort and the demonstration of quality there as there might be when you're 12 deep and only 6 are on the court.
Yeah, definitely. Vital raises in there one really important point, I think, that is applicable not just to this topic. And he says that it's important to stop problems before they become problems, or something along those lines.
Manage problems before they become problems.
Yes, and I think that's a really important issue. So the first one he mentioned was about management. So before you begin working, you have to explain or before you accept the job, you have to explain to management the way that you work so that they don't have any surprises. We often think about things sort of more the other way around, but taking a job works in both ways. Both parties have to be comfortable with the way the other one is working. And I know that Vital, how he's managed his career, he's always been upfront and with how he works, and has not taken jobs or not been offered jobs because of it. So I think that part's really important with the managing the expectations of the club, of the organisation.
Yeah, for sure.
And of course, the other thing. Go on that point.
I was going to say that it just makes a big difference in the squad if they know in advance how things are going to run, rather than trying to have to guess what coach is thinking.
Yeah, I was going to go on with being upfront and open with the team on how it works. So, to say I don't have a starting 6, that everybody from week to week has the opportunity to prove themselves. Again, not just to have a fixed starting lineup at the start of the season and then go through. I think that's a really important point. I think as far as I know, the reality of how Vital works is that when he's selecting his team, he deliberately also tries to put together a team that is of a similar quality from top to bottom. So it's also part of how he puts his team together.
So
how he manages his budget too.
Right. So he wouldn't try to bring in a couple of superstars knowing that he'd be kind of forced at the bottom of the roster to not be as strong?
The national team is a different situation because the national team, you don't really have your choice of players for the most part. But with a club team, he's never been a guy that's worked with stars, who's put together, younger players, sort of, I don't want to say medium level players, but not expensive players, and often had a squad that was of a a very good quality from top to bottom, and that also is one thing that allowed him to work in that way.
Yeah, I would think that it would make a lot of things easier because, well, easier in one regard and maybe not as easy in another regard, because obviously if you have a couple of studs in your team that you know are going to be on the starting lineup all the time, barring, injury or whatever, then that can certainly make the lineup choices a little bit easier. Whereas if you've got 12 guys of roughly similar caliber, that your lineup could change from week to week. It does, as they say, it makes the manager's job a bit tougher, but that's kind of what the players are supposed to do.
It's one of the strange things that I've been working for a while now, and it's somewhere in the middle of last season, I worked out that the thing that creates the most stress for me in my work is not the practice or the or working with the management or the games or preparation, but the thing that actually creates the most stress for me is choosing the starting lineup every week.
Or making substitutions during a match, I would imagine.
Less the substitutions, because often that's clear or not clear. So that's a little bit of it in some circumstances. In Berlin, for example, where we weren't always in danger of losing, so I would be making substitutions just based on playing time rather than on trying to win the game.
Mm-hmm.
That created some stress along the same lines, but if you have a well-functioning group of players who are of a good quality from top to bottom, then at some point you have to put a worthy player on the bench for a match. Someone who's playing well, who's practiced well, who's a good guy, but you just make a choice for the other guy.
Right. So, okay, let's bring back the idea of developing players by getting them playing time. Kind of counter to Russ Rose. What do you see as let me restate that. Is there, to your mind, whether you're disagreeing with Russ, is there a value to getting a younger player, a less experienced player, into matches from time to time to get them on the court in a situation where they're not playing against their own teammates in training?
I think that it's important that they have some taste of the action, so to speak, if you want to talk like a journalist, that they have some opportunities to make some actions in the pressure situation with the crowd, with the scoreboard, with the opponents, et cetera, et cetera. And for the youngest guys, I think that's important to find some moments to do that. For the older guys, sort of the middle of the group maybe, I don't think that it's as important to give them those few rallies, for example. I don't think that it doesn't necessarily help them in the broader scheme.
Well, presumably they've had that experience already, right?
Well, yes. I mean, for them, it's not a question of giving them experience. It's a question of involvement, I guess. And the last question that I asked Vital about, you're playing whole matches every now and again, or playing a few points every match, was because I asked that question specifically because I mostly managed that situation by rotating the starting lineup, by not exactly picking 4 weeks in advance 4 different starting lineups, but along those lines, with the thinking that playing a whole match was better for a guy's form, was better for his confidence. So I have tended to work like that.
Okay, obviously when you were at Berlin, you had opportunities to do that because of the imbalance in the competitive landscape. Are you still able to do that in Poland?
Well, influenced by people such as Vital in his interview, I've gone a little bit back in the other direction. So a few points is maybe a few points in every match is maybe more valuable than the whole match every now and again. And our competitive situation is a little bit different, that I don't really have the opportunity to rotate the squad, because every match is of a high level, and every match we have a chance to win and lose.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's similar here at Midwestern, and I imagine a lot of colleges would think kind of the same thing, where you're trying to balance that. You want to get the young players in and get them some playing time at different points, especially the ones that you project to someday be starters.
Yeah.
And it's tough to do in conference play when you're not the dominant team in the conference.
Mm-hmm.
Fortunately, we can schedule non-conference matches, so where we can play with different things in terms of the roster and the lineups and even sometimes strategy and whatnot. Although you're always balancing that against other considerations as well, be it rankings, RPI, or just the desire to pick up a win if you've maybe gone through a bit of a tough patch, which is something we've definitely experienced with this team this year. So it is, and I definitely appreciate what you're saying in terms of the biggest stress in the job being that game day selection.
Yeah.
It's there's so many unknowns to it. Obviously, like we said, if there are certain guys that are just better than everybody else on the team, that's easy. But then you've got all the rest, where on any given day, if it's fairly close, one guy could have a really good day, or the matchup just happens to work out in a funny way on that particular day. And some of them, it's just completely inexplicable. I remember when I was coaching at Brown with Lake Columbia one year, and we put in our third or fourth string middle, who was undersized, probably really shouldn't have been a middle in the grand scheme of things. And for some reason, they just could not stop her. She scored just about every single time she touched the ball, which is something she never did in any other match that we played. It was just happened to be that one day against that one team. And, all right, there's the volleyball gods are smiling on you, I guess, on that occasion.
It's a completely different topic, but one thing that I've found over the years is that even against better teams, or maybe especially against better teams, by playing with a guy that you don't normally play with, you actually get a really positive effect, because good teams are teams that prepare and scout and have plans, and teams that scout and prepare and have plans are sometimes by definition not as flexible as other teams. And so making that late change or late change or unexpected change can sometimes have extra effects.
Well, and I remember last year when I was coaching at Svetala, there was a team that was second from bottom in the league, and we went up to play them at their place. And we won. I'm pretty sure we won in 3. Maybe it was we won in 4 or whatever. But I remember talking with the team afterwards, and they were just, all of them were saying it's so hard to play this team because they're not predictable. You don't know when the ball's coming over, where it's coming over, because their level was just that much lower. When you play the better teams, you know what they're going to do. I mean, you've talked about it in terms of scouting men's teams, where 80 or 90% of what everybody's going to do. Against a team that's of a lesser quality, there's a much bigger random factor. And
Yep.
and so the players they're not used to it, so it becomes, and I think it's probably a good experience for them because it makes them focus that much more, and have to be responsible for more things. But it is funny to watch them struggle with it. It's like, okay, that team's not good over there, and you should crush them, but you're floundering here. Come on, get it figured out. All right, we're running down on time. Any final thoughts from Vital?
Just to bring it all back, that how you manage those situations is really important. Managing the problem before it becomes a problem. So being open, being upfront with the management. If the situation arises, with the parents, with the team as well. And then he doesn't mention it, but obviously once you are upfront and open, then you have to follow through on your words. And if you do all of those things, you can have a really well-functioning team that reaches its best possibilities and create the fewest problems for yourself.
All right. Wonderful.
And make everyone happy.
Of course. Okay.
Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode. For show notes and more, visit volleyballcoachingwizards.com/podcast. Got an idea for a future episode or want to ask a question? Send an email to podcast@volleyballcoachingwizards.com.